I know I'm not the first person to say this, but can we never wear this strip ever again? And yes, I realize they probably determine what kit to wear before the season even starts, but come on, this is getting ridiculous now. And I also need to start the show by really acknowledging the Aston Villa away support. There were times on Sunday, especially in that first half, where it was hard to tell who the home side was, and it was the same thing at Leeds. And I just wonder how many people did both Leeds and London this week. I mean, that is dedication, and man, would I love to be a Villa vagabond and build my entire life and weekends around the away travel. I can imagine it would be very difficult after a result like that one. I mean, I had to take a sad nap after that result. I was so disappointed, and now I need a comfort whiskey. And when I need a comfort whiskey, I usually turn to Old Pulteney just because the price is right and it's very consistent. And the longer this stuff sits in the barrels and absorbs the briny, salty Scottish sea air, the better it gets. Let's review. West Ham United 2, Aston Villa 1. Greetings from the Villa Parlour, where we've officially sprung ahead. And so there's this springtime optimism with daylight savings in the air. And there was a lot of optimism heading into Sunday's game as well. Do you know that since the 3-3 draw with Leeds at home, Aston Villa have played 11 halves of football, including the first at West Ham, and conceded in only 2 of them, the first half at St. James's Park and then, of course, late to Watford. And so at halftime at 0-0, I'm thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe we're going to end a long string of depressing results and statistics in East London, and maybe even put an end to West Ham's very impressive streak of scoring in every single league game they've played at home this year. 0-3 in the bloody blue strip. Villa have not beaten a David Moyes side in 11 straight attempts. They've never won at the London Stadium, even though the draw in 2020 did feel like a victory in the Great Escape season. Danny Ings has never scored or won against West Ham in 12 tries. And that matches Villa's futility in East London now 11 years since Darren Bent and Gabby Agbonlahor scored in a winning cause at Upton Park. Oh, that stadium. Yikes. Right, here we go with the Holy Trinity, the 3 big issues or moments that defined West Ham United 2, Aston Villa 1, starting with the key statistics. And there was one thing that really stood out in this game of stats. First half heavily favored Villa, and then it evened out. But look at the bottom at possession. Villa had the bulk of it, and yes, they were chasing the game at 2 down. But the last 2 times that they had the bulk of possession was at Newcastle and home to Watford. They're still getting the shots and having a very good percentage of those hitting the target, and their accurate passes was actually better than the hosts, but not enough today. Tyrone Mings turned 29 on Sunday, and if there's one area of his game that I would love to see some improvement over the summer, it's his work in the opposite penalty area, because this guy is the biggest guy on the park week in and week out. Do you remember the corner in the second half when he's battling away with Yarmolenko? The ball comes across, and he's a head taller than Yarmolenko, and he tries to side head it. It doesn't go anywhere near the goal, rather than just playing it back across into the danger area the way he's facing. If he could contribute more goals the way, say, I don't know, Connor Cody is for Wolves, it would take some of the pressure off of him to be perfect in his own penalty area. Honorable mention to referee Jared Gillette, the Australian who was in charge on Sunday, but he was also the man in the middle for Villa Leeds that I alluded to earlier, and I commented during that show of what a great job he was doing of just letting play continue. He played a great advantage that led to the 3-1 Villa goal in that game, and the risk you take as a player in a game like that where the referee is allowing play to carry on is that if you take a dive or if you fall easily, you risk being caught in a counter attack. At halftime, the foul count was 7 by West Ham and just 1 by Villa, and that was winding the crowd up. And you just wonder, as the game carried on, and because referees are human, Do those things tend to even out? This is foreshadowing I'm throwing your way right now. Because on the 2-0 goal, Leon Bailey goes down very easily against Declan Rice, and Mr. Gillette, as he had been doing throughout most of the game, said, play on. And I realize it's hard sometimes for a substitute to get a feel of how a game is being refereed, but my first instinct on that one was that Bailey went down too easily. Maybe it was a legitimate foul, we'll never know, but unfortunately for Bailey and Aston Villa, the team was completely out of shape behind him, and that ended up being the 2-0 and game-winning goal. A possible candidate I considered for top 3 issues or moments was Jacob Ramsey's goal because it was so beautifully taken and constructed. No question, Emi Buendia brought a spark when he came on. He does so well to sidestep his man initially and then have the vision to spot his teammate and lay it on a platter. And then what a finish by Jacob Ramsey. Such a shame it came at the time that it did and maybe not earlier in the game. And if you had said to me in August that Jacob Ramsey would have more goals than Danny Ings by mid-March, I wouldn't have believed you. I have to give an honorable mention to Emi Martinez for the save off the corner, and you could see why only Liverpool has more goals from corners than West Ham United. This isn't a top 3 moment for me, but it came only moments after one of our top 3 moments, and it's a great ball, a great header, what a reaction save, and then an incredible miss by Craig Dawson afterwards. And it was at that point that I thought, if they can't score from that moment, they're not scoring at all. Aston Villa is going to prevent the Hammers from scoring at home for the first time this season. And my final candidate for top 3 issues in this game was Steven Gerrard and his staff deciding to name an unchanged side. A very bold move given the tight turnaround. So obviously they gave them 2 recovery days and sent them right back out there. And based on that first half, it was the right decision. Isn't it ironic that it was Luca Dean, who didn't play at home to Southampton, was the one who hobbled off lame? And I'm just wondering if he wanted the chance to try to run it off because he did not seem happy about coming out. And on Thursday, I said that Jacob Ramsey looked really leggy and just off it in that first half. Lo and behold, the manager showed confidence in this young player, kept him on the park, and he might have been the man of the match. Obviously, Phil Coutinho is a candidate for man of the match in every game he plays, but Jacob Ramsey's numbers were exceptional, starting with accurate passes, 91%, of which 3 were key passes. His successful dribbles, 2 out of 2. Remember the one he drove into the West Ham penalty area in the first half? His accurate long balls, 2 out of 3, 66%, not bad at all. His tackles, 3 out of 4, and then he had 8 ground duels and won 6 of them, and that's on top of a fantastic goal. This just felt like a missed opportunity somehow for Aston Villa. No Jared Bowen in West Ham's squad, and he's been brilliant for them. Didn't think the Hammers were great in the first half, and as the game wore on and the muscular injuries started mounting, you're thinking, yeah, good. Empty the tank. All of a sudden, Antonio's out, then Cresswell. But the early injury to Luca Dean also limited Steven Gerrard's options later in the game when they fell behind, and let's be honest, it was another great virtuoso performance from Phil Coutinho, who had a 96% pass completion ratio from 67 passes in a midfield where he was playing against Declan Rice and Thomas Souček. And we wasted it. Right, here's the number 3 big issue or moment that defined West Ham's win over Aston Villa, and that was the 2-0 goal. And you can debate the order of all of these 3, but I showed you already the moment where Leon Bailey went down, maybe rather softly. Was it a foul? We'll never know. Declan Rice steps easily past John McGinn and the counterattack is on, illustrating why it's so important to score first, because when the opponent is chasing a game, these opportunities present themselves. Now, could the defending have been better after that moment that Rice got past McGinn? Yes, probably. When you watch the goal from behind the net, Ashley Young is nowhere to be seen, and it's from his area of the field that the goal is scored. And then there's always this debate about what a central defender needs to do when facing up to a shot. Does he try to block it? Does he stay on his feet? Because after the goal was scored, Emi Martinez was pretty mad at his captain, the birthday boy, for kind of blocking him. And in fairness, and in just looking at this again, does Emi Martinez really look like he's going to save a shot from this range, even as good as he is? I don't think so. Number 2. Fabianski. Wow. The West Ham United goalkeeper had a very good game and made 2 great saves, but this one was of the world-class variety. And it came from a corner in the 56th minute with the game still tied 0-0. Danny Ings doing Danny Ings things. He knows that if he gets the shot off quickly, if he gets good contact and picks a corner, the goalkeeper does not have time to get set. And somehow, some way, Lucas Fabianski gets a millimeter of the tip of his glove to it to knock it off the post and then collect. This is an incredible stop, and it could really be the number 1 moment, because if that goes in, we have a completely different match on our hands. And then he makes another excellent save in the 89th minute after a very crafty interchange between Leon Bailey and Emi Buendia, which almost comes off. These are the types of things you try when you're 2-0 down and desperate, and credit to Matty Cash's Polish international teammate. Comes off his line, spots the danger, makes himself big, and stops it there. Otherwise, Aston Villa would have scored a minute earlier than they did, which might have helped their potential revival. And the number 1 big issue or moment that defined West Ham 2, Aston Villa 1, the 1-0 goal. Just like Matty Cash scoring at Brighton with the message for his friend in the Ukraine, fate was going to extend its hand one more time and impact a game involving Aston Villa. Andrei Yarmolenko had not been involved in first-team football for 4 games since the invasion began, which is totally understandable. No involvement at all. I mean, think about that. He's got to worry about his family, his friends, his neighbors, property, all of it. This would be stressful and distracting in any profession, let alone one where you have to go and perform in front of 60,000 people. Michail Antonio going down with a hamstring issue was like the first in a series of events which allowed Yarmolenko to get a hero's introduction to the game, which in itself was a wonderful moment and must have made him feel like he was 10 feet tall. And then comes the 70th minute, just 18 minutes after being introduced. And what a world-class moment this was. The efficiency with which he takes it and then stabs at it is just incredible. There's no way Emi Martinez could get set that quickly. Just like we talked about Danny Ings getting the shot off at the other end that Fabianski saved, this was even better. And what happened next? The greatest scriptwriters in the world couldn't have conjured this up. Now, you have to be a pretty stoic human being to not feel the feels of that moment under those circumstances. But my first instinct was, of course, this had to happen in a game involving Aston Villa. And I feel slightly guilty about that. Neutrals, they don't care. This is great. This is an iconic moment in football. I'm sure there were even Aston Villa fans in the stadium who were standing and cheering and maybe even welling up a little bit at that moment in time. But in the context of this game and in Aston Villa's season and the run they've been on, how big that goal was as the first goal, but also the lift it gave the entire stadium, because up until then, not much was going on. It still kind of sucked for us. Said Benrahma's role in the goal and the game itself was pretty crucial. Here's another guy who wasn't really starting for West Ham, and all of a sudden he contributes to both of their goals. And as good as Matty Cash has been over the last stretch of games, he was mentally and physically shattered at this point, as were many of his teammates. And the hardest thing to do when you're mentally and physically tired is defend and make decisions. It's the decisions that usually go awry when you're exhausted. And for some reason, he decides to abandon Benrahma and the ball and go after the overlapping runner to his right. And John McGinn's nowhere near close enough, which created an open invitation for Benrahma to take up that space. And funny enough, last year in this fixture between these two teams, from very similar position, Benrahma set up the 2-1 game-winning goal. He's a bit of a Villa killer. Going back even further to the inception of the goal, the change of possession, it's a long throw from Matt Cash deep in his own end to Leon Bailey, who had just stepped onto the park. Now, this isn't Leon Bailey's fault, and it's really hard on the guy. He hasn't had a touch yet, and he's dealing with a long throw and Declan Rice right in his back pocket. And I'm just wondering if in those circumstances, there's another option from the throw in there, because it's a diagonal infield ball, not easy to deal with, especially with a player who just comes on. And this is Austin McPhee's remit, restarts from throw-ins. And it's certainly something that I bet will be examined this coming week. And the last thing I want to bring up is the sheer influence of Declan Rice on this game, and clearly for his club. He's their captain, and look at where they are. Aston Villa want to be where West Ham is in the table right now, and you cannot tell me that a big reason why is this player. I mean, in this game alone, he gets in on Leon Bailey. That leads to the turnover and the 1-0 goal. Then he wins a ground duel with Bailey, gets past John McGinn, goes on a rampage. It's 2-0. He can run with it. He can tackle. He can win an aerial duel. He could block shots. He could switch the ball. He could shoot. This guy does everything. A big, powerful influence in the middle of the park. Every single club in the world wants a player like this. And as well as I thought Douglas Luiz played today, and I thought he did play well, and he had the battle scar to prove it, can you imagine having a player like that in our central midfield? Is there another emerging Declan Rice out there somewhere? Can Aston Villa find their Declan Rice this summer? And predictably, a hit on some of these subcategories that we've been following throughout the season, particularly the record away from Villa Park, which now drops to 18 of 45 points. But I think the biggest thing that concerns me is the results against the top 6. 3 out of 21 possible points. Obviously, this next run of games is going to define Aston Villa's season and also set up what they're going to do in the summer. Who stays? Who goes? What type of player does this club need right now? And it starts with a visit from Arsenal early for me on Saturday morning, a club they beat 1-0 at home last year thanks to an early Ollie Watkins goal. They hung on, but hopefully this year Aston Villa feels like us supporters feel, that Sunday was a missed opportunity to make a statement against a bona fide top 6 side. Until that time, be well, and as always, up the mighty Villa.